Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Non-Pro TV Hangout. This week, we are talking about The Strain, Episode 3, Gone Smooth.
This was an episode, James. I don't know how I would classify it, but it was definitely an episode.
The title is very apropos for some of the events in the episode.
You know, that didn't even dawn on me until you brought it up, and thank you, because I've got a lot to say on that now. So,
well, before we get started talking about the nitty-gritty of the episode, I know you have a summary for the folks at home who haven't quite been following along for us, Ken.
yes. In the episode, our main characters, Ephraim and Nora, fight to save Captain Redfern's life before coming face-to-face with the horrifying effects of the virus, which is pretty gruesome.
Oh, terrible.
A spike, and a spike in rat attacks signals FET that something inexplicable is happening deep below the city, which I kind of freaked when I realized where all these rats were scurrying away from.
All right.
Released from jail, Satrakian begins his own merciless plan to stop the spread of the disease. And I know that he's one of your favorite characters on the show so far.
Satrakian is really cool. I mean, we haven't gotten a lot with him as far as his backstory is concerned. I mean, other than obviously that he's a vampire hunter and he's done this before. And he obviously wants the he wants the agents, not so much F, but his partner, to really kind of buy into what he's selling, and he confronts her in the episode to be like, this is what you got to do.
To be honest, it was the other way around. She approached him as he was coming out of court to kind of get what he knew out of it, and he was a little reluctant, and then kind of decided to side with her after he realized just how gung-ho she was about finding out.
Yeah, he told her that she needs to get her hands on the manifest and that she needs to destroy all the bodies.
Yeah. And actually, he had his own little agenda going. He hired someone to get a copy of the manifest for himself because his exact words were he was going to visit the relatives of everybody on that list.
Yep, and as we know, there are quite a few of, or at least one of the relatives on that list who took in one of the undead vampires, the little girl from the last episode. Now, in relation to Gone Smooth, the episode title, I want to open with one of my favorite scenes, talk about one of my favorite scenes from the episode, and it's not the scene you're thinking of. It's the opening scene where we get to see the number one kind of lackey, the number one guy working for the master, as he makeups up, Okay. One of the cool things we've been seeing. Yeah, one of the cool things we've been seeing is, our victims, are infected, kind of lose their hair and have all these things happen to them. And we get to see him, who really does, at the opening of this scene, look kind of like this vampire. And we get to see him put on the cosmetics, put in the contacts, put on the wig, so that he can function in everyday society. And it's a really, really neat and really cool shot scene. And I think it's, it's kind of the opposite. It's neat because it's the opposite of what we see happening to the rest of our characters throughout the episode, to the rest of the victims, which I think was kind of a really neat parallel going into the episode that we got that.
Well, I'm a huge sci-fi comic book horror nerd, and I think before we started I had brought it up too. It reminded me a lot, you would probably remember Jack Nicholson as the Joker.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Applying the flesh color makeup to kind of blend in as a Joker, even though that smile wasn't fooling anybody. But on the horror side, back in, I believe it was around 89, 90, Robert Englund, who's known for playing Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, did an adaptation of Phantom of the Opera, where his face is just completely burned and scarred and disfigured. And what he does is he has prosthetics and some of his victims he would take the body parts of and apply them to his face and then conceal everything with makeup to pass as human. And that was one of the things that I immediately went to when I was watching that opening scene. It was very reminiscent, very creepy.
That's cool. I think that's really neat.
But Now, you do want to talk a little bit about Sean Astin and his character, Jim Kent.
I do. I've been enjoying I like Sean Astin. He's a good actor, but something's been irking me, not just with him, but with the show in general. And I think that I think it really was demonstrated in Sean Astin's character. Last episode, we saw him let the truck go that was working for the old organization of vampires, and and he said he wanted out. He was done, but he followed up because he wanted to know what was going on. And then we see him confront, we see Jim
Eckhorst
confront, yeah, and he's like, wouldn't it be great if your wife who has cancer got into that program she wants to get into? And this is the first time we're hearing about his wife having cancer. So, it's kind of like, as Frank said last show, and as we've heard in the opening to the first show, that love is the weakness really for these characters going forward. And then after he agrees to be their lackey so that his wife can get into the program, then we get to meet his wife, and we see kind of his weakness. And I feel like for me, like I'm so used to as a storytelling mechanic, is you show the characters' weaknesses before you exploit them. And I feel like here we're getting a lot of the opposite. Like we're getting told that they have weaknesses, and then we're getting to see them. I don't want to say it's like too much show not tell, because I think there's, or tell not show. I think there's some problems with that, being flown around all the time. But I feel like in this instance, or with a lot of these characters, I'd really like to see the humanity behind their actions, before I see those things kind of exploited. Of course, I say that, and I think, it's maybe not working so well for what they're trying to do with Ephraim. And you can talk a little bit about the scene we had earlier on with F at the courthouse for the hearing for, custody for his son.
Well, before we get into that too, I completely understand what you're saying in the storytelling narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But in a weird way too, it kind of makes things that much more creepy because we as the audience have no idea what's going on. At the same time, Jim Kent, Sean Astin's character, doesn't have any idea what's going on. Ephraim and Nora don't have any idea what's going on. In a weird kind of way, we're getting to experience kind of at the same time what these guys are. With F and Nora, we're experiencing what the vampires can do for the first time when they see it. When the captain comes back to life, and we get to see the really full-blown possibilities of what these vampires are capable of.
Mm-hmm.
With Jim Kent, we're actually experiencing from his end what the inner circle of his vampire troupe is. I actually got more about what was going on with the vampires through the scene with Sean Astin and the character of Eckhorst. I got more from that scene than I have so far with the whole 3 episodes.
I think you're right. I think this episode did a really great job of kind of really expanding on a lot of the mythology that the show's been kind of hinting at the past 2 episodes, and this one really kind of honed it in.
But like I said, going back, we're experiencing Sean Astin, jumping into all of a sudden the realization of this organization that he's a part of, and just like him, we the audience are getting to know more about it at the same time. It's not the perfect dialogue or narrative for the story, but I kind of like the fact that on a show where anything can possibly happen, we're all kind of experiencing at the same time with these characters. And like I said, it doesn't always work, but I actually give them credit for trying.
That's kind of cool. I didn't think of it like that. That is a neat way of looking at it.
Yeah, but then we jump forward, and we've been building up over the last couple episodes to the custody hearing with Ephraim and his I guess ex-wife. Are they still married, or are they actually divorced?
They're separated.
Yeah, and
I don't know if they're fully divorced yet.
And in the last episode, we had a scene of F and his son. He's kind of coaching him how to lead with his heart to decide, where he wants to be in regards to his parents.
Mm-hmm.
And during the hearing, we get a complete 360 where his son decides that he thinks it would be best for his father if he only visited once or twice a month.
Yeah, ouch.
You know, and I mean, I felt that. I mean, that really tugged at my heartstrings. I mean, I actually do believe that he does love his son, and at first I really thought the mom was coaching the son to say this, and then she comes clean while the two of them are talking after the hearing and said that actually came from your son. That's how he felt. You know, and it kind of stinged me emotionally a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of a problem with what's going on with Ephraim, and it's not so much of a bad thing. Like I get the story they're going for. You know, he's really dedicated to his job, and he's really good at what he does, which it makes it hard for him to be a good father and a good husband. But I guess I feel like Ephraim is the only person who hasn't kind of figured that out yet. Like he's the only guy who hasn't like made his peace with the fact that, you know, his wife has moved on, and clearly his son is, you know, like in a weird spot with what he thinks about, you know, his father and what his father should be doing, you know. And it's just, I don't want to say like it's bad, but it's just kind of, it's kind of weird from a third party perspective, seeing it so far out, at least for me, that he's just not getting any hints, you know. I don't know. I have a strange emotional disconnect here that you seem to not be having. So
I think that this is a test for Ephraim, essentially. I think this is a character study of how far down can this character go before he either A, breaks it, he hits a breaking point, or B, can persevere and figure everything out, because he seems like the kind of person who is constantly struggling to make everything work. He doesn't like chaos. So this whole issue that's going on with the CDC, it's a mystery that he can't solve or answer, and it's killing him. He's lost his wife now, and now he's losing his son. And I'm sure there's going to be a hell of a lot more casualties during the course of this before, you know, he actually perseveres through it.
I can see that. It's interesting. Like I said, I have a strange emotional disconnect with Ephraim, but like I think it's neat that you see it as like he's being tested. I think that could be really cool, and I hope if that's the way they're going for it, that they keep like honing that in, because if I can see that continued logic in there, that could be really cool.
And don't get me wrong, morally, I don't think he's a morally, you know, decent character.
I mean, I don't think he seems like kind of a jerk as far as a decent character goes, you know, like morally, but I don't think that makes him a bad guy. I think, you know, I just think maybe this whole event will help him kind of reevaluate where he's at.
Right. Can I jump into the part that made me want to decide that I don't know if I want to watch this show anymore?
Yes. Yeah, that was weird. For those of you who don't know, we're talking about our one of our victims, our kind of metal rocker, our little Marilyn Manson wannabe.
I can't even remember the guy's name. That's what's bothering me.
He's, you know, in full swing of the symptoms. Really the other guy who's in full swing of the symptoms, other than our pilot, and he, other than losing his hair and becoming very pale and sickly looking, also is starting to lose other things.
Man, there was just such a weird breakdown that was so reminiscent of David Cronenberg's The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. You know, he took a bite out of let's say a very nice girl last episode, and they're reeling from that, and he's going through changes. He popped a contact out, and just like all the other victims, the red eyes are starting to form on him, and he's having all these pains, and he's going pale. He went to wipe his makeup off and realized that his face is the same color practically of the makeup that he had on, and again the hair's coming out. And then he made the mistake of going to the bathroom, and I think the director and producers made the mistake of allowing us to watch him go to the bathroom, because because after the stream was done, we heard a very, very effervescent kerplop, and camera cut away, and we realized that he's got nothing there afterwards, and he's completely bald and shaven. Hence, I think the reason why the episode was called Gone Smooth.
Yep, I think so. Now, I guess I'm not gonna say I did have a problem with this. Like, it seemed a little ridiculous, but I liked it in the sense that it made me think about something. I mean, I guess vampires don't produce any waste, right? And they certainly don't sexually reproduce. So, what use would he have for something like that? Wouldn't it just be like kind of a burden? I don't know. I thought it was neat because it made me think about something I'd never thought about in vampire mythology, and obviously it's something new to the show. I've obviously never heard of this, in all my other vampire trending.
I'll put it in perspective for you and see if it changes your mind. Have you ever seen the movie Highlander?
Okay.
Immortals cannot produce, yet I don't see any vital anatomy leaving them.
Yeah, but the Highlander's not like a monster, you know what I mean? Like, a vampire is a monster. He's kind of supposed to be like grotesque and misshapen and just not normal. The Highlander's supposed to be like a dude, other than being immortal.
All right. Well, again, I cringed. I covered up my own anatomy. I bawled into the fetal position on my couch, crying like a little girl, saying, "Please, not me. Please, not me." I personally, my worst fear was that it was just going to be blood coming out, and it was much, much worse. So
just started passing a kidney stone right there.
Yeah, maybe I haven't had to go through that. I was wondering if maybe that would. I hope what happened to him isn't really what happens if you got to pass one. But man, oh God, I didn't know if I wanted to keep watching afterwards. I had to take a quick break. So.
Well, I'm glad you came back because we were treated at the end with obviously a really awesome scene with our entire CDC cast. The good old pilot is found just sucking on the bags of blood, the donation blood in the bottom.
Can you explain that to me for a second? Because
Sure.
he was sucking down bags of blood, which obviously meant that it was part of, like, I guess, a lab. Why did they say that he was in the kitchen?
They had because they were still in. Did they say he was in the kitchen?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I guess maybe
Nora told that from to meet him in the kitchen, and I mean there were obviously like pots and stuff in there too. But I mean
then they were
like
still,
the blood
I
bags.
think they were still at they haven't left. They didn't go to like a lab or anything. They probably were still in the airport. So they had quarantined like.
Well, it was in the hospital. They were in the hospital.
They were in the hospital?
Yeah.
What? I guess maybe because the blood had to be kept in the freezer. I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't remember that.
Yeah, it was a weird kind of disconnect. I mean, it was obvious he had like blood bank bags, but he was in the kitchen munching on them.
I guess that's where the freezer was.
Yeah. Well, if I'm serving my Jello to patients in a hospital, I guess I would keep my blood in there too.
That Jello's just as awful.
Yes. I bet the blood tastes better.
So, but it's cool because he's munching down on the blood, and they come in and they see him, and he just like attacks them, and then they, of course, they fight back, and then the other monsters start walking in, and it's just it's like a bloodbath there, and they kill him, and they're in it now, right?
Well, so yeah, essentially it was F and Nora and Ken in the kitchen with him, and he tried to attack all three of them, and I guess it was the first time he tried using his mouth tendril and just couldn't get the aim right.
Yeah.
And then it was Ephraim who wound up taking a fire extinguisher and pounding his face in.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's cool because, I mean, that's a big moment for our main cast because they obviously, maybe they could be in denial in episode 4, but...
Well, as I said, and that goes back to us kind of being in the same boat as the actors realizing what they're actually up against. We actually get to experience them realizing it for the first time.
Right,
You
and
know,
which this scene is very apparent and very cool because it means, like, hopefully in episode 4, which I'll be on in just a little bit, we'll kind of see them kind of dealing with, like, what was that? Maybe we should go back to that old guy with the cane sword. Maybe he knows something. And obviously Jim's gonna be like, what have I gotten myself into?
I think
So
he's saying that now, actually.
so I think it's really neat. Overall, what did you think? Are we episode up or down? I know you had a problem with the loss of the genitals there, but
I
besides that,
have I have to say, with the pace of the show and where things were going, I thought it was kind of weird and disjointed. And I don't think I think the first 2 episodes, I think were lesser than this one. I think this one was a lot stronger and actually started moving things further.
I agree. I thought this one was like really like a strong episode. Like I could feel it kind of starting to hit its footing, feel it hitting the paces, and then of course at the end, when they see that these things are obviously monsters, now like I know that a bunch of our characters have just hit like the main driving force of the plot in the episode, the whole meta plot and everything, and I think that's going to just power us through to the next couple of episodes. So
Yeah,
just go.
absolutely, absolutely. Anything that you're looking forward to in upcoming episodes after seeing this? Is there something that you want to see them focus on?
I think I still need a bit more of uh what's his name? The older gentleman, our experienced vampire hunter.
Oh
Um
yeah, S- Satrakian.
Satrakian. Thank you. I keep, forgetting. He's got a complicated name.
Yeah.
Satrakian. I
Well,
think
and they actually acknowledged that during the court scene where the judge is fumbling over his name and Abraham actually says, whichever, it's fine.
I'm going to call him Abraham because it's easier. So Abraham, I really think Abraham, I think what's cool is I want to see F and his team interacting with Abraham because I think it'll be really cool with him kind of being like, well, here's what we're up against and here's how we stop it. And then them kind of seeing where they fall on the believing scale based on what they've seen and all that type of stuff.
In the same vein, I want to see more of Abraham also, but I want to see more of a flashback storytelling of what the history of him and possibly the Master is.
That would be really cool. And obviously I want to see a little bit more of, the Master and this vampire organization. We've got a lot of neat stuff on them, but, obviously it can always use more.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to it. It's on in almost a half hour, so I might be glued to my television with my hands over my eyes just in the event of any more genital massacre.
I certainly, I don't know if they need to show that to us again. I think maybe we got the point.
I think I'm good. I think I'm good.
All right, excellent, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully next week you'll see Frank and Matt back so we can get their opinions of the past 2 episodes. That's it. Good job on the TV party, Ken, as always.
Have a good night, James.
Good night, and let's hear the music.